Well, hello, welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and we are in this first interview, first interview ever that I'm going to do in my channel, and we have the awesome Ed Latimore with us. And well, he has agreed to do this amazing interview, and he is a former professional heavyweight boxer, amateur national champion boxer, competitive chess player, and best-selling author who holds a BA in physics from Duquesne University. Currently, he's working on his forthcoming book, Hard Lessons from the Hurt Business, Boxing and the Art of Life, to be published by Penguin Random House in 2025. Ed, when you have your book out, I want to read it and we're going to review it right here. Drawing from his unique experiences in professional boxing, physics, and overcoming addiction, Latimore teaches audiences how to develop grit and resilience. He shares the unconventional methods that enable him to excel in boxing despite starting late in the sport and in academics despite struggling in high school. His distinctive approach combines lessons from the ring, scientific thinking, and personal transformation to help others overcome their own challenges and achieve success. Ed, welcome to my show. It is an honor to have you here, and especially with that topic that you made this video. I'm going to share the screen to show that you made this video called "The Real Reason Why Man Must Learn How to Fight." And just to have some kind of to say how I want this conversation to go. Maybe we know why men should learn how to fight, but I want these conversations like start from the opposite side, like people who say, "Oh no, that is not necessary. There must be a ton of reasons that, or justifications or excuses that men say that I am too old or that is not necessary. That is violence. It's not the answer." So let's start there. What is the worst takes that you have heard about this? About this?
I was talking about this video on Facebook, and some guy chimed in, and he was like, two civilized adults should be able to talk out their problems without resorting to any type of violence. And I said to him, I was like, I completely agree, but the problem with that perspective is that it assumes that both adults are civilized. And as much as I would love to believe and hope that there is a degree of rationality and critical thinking in every person, I know that is not true. I know that not every person is good, and not every person has the best intentions, and there are just jackals in the world who want to take advantage of people, and so you have to be able to defend yourself against these individuals. I'm a big proponent of carrying guns for the same reason. Now, one of the other thing that I have to make sure I make clear with this stance is that I'm not telling you to take every confrontation to a physical level. What the knowledge of self-defense does, and the awareness that you can defend yourself if necessary, what that does is that kind of works like a beware of dog sign, but it's communicated subconsciously through the way you carry yourself, and that lets people know that this person is probably not the target for any of my shenanigans, and
Yes.
that's the real reason.
Yeah, because many times it's like you have these bullies that they want to like maybe pick on somebody. Maybe that somebody is you. If they see you with a bad posture, we're talking about body language. I say, "Oh, I can pick on this guy. This guy is this. I can be a bully this guy." But then there's the thing that can't. Why can't we just pretend? Let's try to emphasize it. Why can't just pretend that we can talk ourselves out of a situation? Because you said that it's not like bringing every conflict to a physical confrontation. How could we de-escalate? Let's say that we know how to fight, but how do we
Mhm.
de-escalate the situation without fighting?
Well, but before we even get to de-escalation, one of the things that we want to control is the environment. I've been sober now. It'll be well, I think it'll be 12 years this December. It'll be 11 or 12. It'll be 2024. So it'll be 11 years. Uh, and one of the great things about not drinking is that it eliminates a whole host of problems that you might otherwise have to encounter. So by not drinking, this will tie into the greater picture. I'm not out at night. I'm not in bars with alcohol. Alcohol is implicated in like every violent crime almost every violent crime to some degree that is not premeditated. Um, I'm not. I'm not around people where there's a large amount of testosterone flowing and situations where guys feel like they got to prove themselves. And I'm 39 now, so it's not like I stopped drinking like a year ago and be like, of course you shouldn't be around those places. I was still going. I still could have gone out to bars in my late 20s, and but I avoided a lot of that. So the first step is really keeping yourself out of situations where that can be an issue. Now you can't control everything; things happen. I think one of the most common places where this kind of thing can happen, where a confrontation can potentially escalate. It's like at a sporting event. You're not there drinking, but other guys are, and there's energy rising. Um, and then when it comes to de-escalation, the first thing is that you aside from carrying yourself really well, you're not the one. Is I find that greeting someone with respect, a firm respect, not of like this deference, but just treating them like a human, talking to them, and not assuming the worst as you communicate. Well, it there's something that's really powerful, about looking someone in the eyes, not staring, but looking someone in the eye, using their name, cracking a joke here and there, poking a little fun at things, really, really lightening the mood. But now you're not doing this out of a fear of the person. You're doing it out of an avoidance of a potential conflict, because one of the things that happens when you're trained in any sort of way is you realize very quickly how fragile a person is, especially an untrained person. And most people who are trained, they don't use that training to victimize people. I mean, you certainly could have the bad luck of crossing the one guy who is basically a sociopath in this regard, but when you know what you're capable of and you know what's at stake, well, you know what you're very motivated to keep it from going there, because then you get a whole host of other problems, and then you might have to hurt someone, and who knows what's going on in that guy's life, if he's just having a bad day or an off day, if he's got a family, whatever, right? You don't want to get into that. So that all comes around to the way to de-escalate any tension, whether it's a physical conflict or even just an emotional one, is really to attempt to make a connection with the person. And it doesn't have to be this deep. Let's sit down and have a drink and chat about your life connection. But I think a lot of people just want to be recognized as human and given respect. Unfortunately, they never learned the proper way to go about eliciting those feelings from their fellow man, and as such, can go about. They go about it in a way that they think is how it's going to happen, or they're just out of their emotions. But your job, as the one who presumably has the force advantage on your side, whether that be in the form of skill training or a firearm, is to go, okay, let's do what we can and do it in a way to where people feel like they get to leave safe and face. Because that's the other thing you don't want to do. You definitely don't want to like embarrass a guy. If you can give someone a way out that lets them save face, you've solved so much. People get caught up in their egos a lot, and they want to like own the guy, or they want to make their point, or exert their presence or their dominance. Like, no, the most important thing is to keep people from getting hurt, seriously hurt, because that can go south really quickly.
You said a couple of things that are really interesting. The first one is is that the people who are untrained are the ones who are more prone to explode, or being
Mhm.
like cruel, or being unhinged, or something like that. It's like they lack the discipline. If they are not trained, they lack the discipline, especially lacking the discipline of their emotions, and that is the actual danger. That is a real thing. And the other is the part of the respect, which I completely agree with you. I think that sometimes many people have maybe shitty lives. Maybe they don't get the respect they want at home. They don't know how to get that respect at home. They never got that respect while growing up, and maybe they have this like this conflict with life, with the world, and maybe just treating them with respect, like you say, you don't have to do this out of weakness. You can do this out of that you know what you're capable of. That is the difference. Is the framing, in which what I want to say about the fact that if you know how to fight, if you know how to throw a punch, you you frame this respect from this position of power. Okay, it's not
Mhm.
that you're not going to use the power to humiliate the person, but to treat them with respect, knowing that everybody deserves that respect. And I want to mention perhaps one of my favorite quotes in history comes from you. It is important to set the record straight. To if that comes from you, I think it's awesome when you said, "Speed beats power, and positioning beats speed." I mean, I've seen you tweet that a couple times. I think that is just brilliant, and it applies to everything in life. The first time that I read that, I said this applies to everything in life. It's like you're saying, in the sense that I asked the question about de-escalating the situation, and you answer, well, the idea is not be in the situation in the first place. Is to not be in the situation, and alcohol is a big player on that. As maybe having this being in these environments is a bit part of that. But what if we are, I don't know, civilized? We live in this in a city, and we have to at some point face. I come from Venezuela. We can be a bit paranoid. We have ice at the back of our heads. We are always looking for where's the exit. But what if we need to use that power, so to speak? How do you achieve that that level of okay, I need to use force up to that point? How difficult is that?
How difficult is it? That is a great question. I'm going to speak from my experience with American law, and you adjust or tweak this to wherever you are listening to this. But there are certain expectations depending on the situation and the state you're in, where I live. If someone enters your home, I think in just about every state, there's no duty to retreat. There's no duty to. Um, I'm pretty sure you don't even have to like not try to kill the guy, but don't quote me on that. But one of the big things is there's no duty to retreat. Like you need to engage and neutralize this person. Uh, as far as public situations, assuming you can't retreat, because some places do have a duty to retreat, like they're basically telling you, you leave the situation. Now, if they follow you, all bets are off. In that case, you need to. We'll start with a quote, one of my favorite quotes to describe this, and then we'll elaborate on that. That it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
I
And the
agree.
idea is like, uh, you know, when it comes to saving your life, you're not thinking or protecting your loved ones or protecting yourself. You're not really thinking about the law. You're thinking about stopping the thing that may cause you to be carried by 6. in that regard, you use the force necessary to stop the person. That's usually pretty cut and dry. There's a big case going on right now here in New York about a guy who choked out a homeless man. From my understanding of the case, he's probably got a 50-50 shot at getting off, as I understand it. But I may be missing something that tilts it either way. But looking at the case, one of the big things about it is like, well, did he have to choke him out? Um, maybe he didn't, and I'll have to look more into that. But that's if he killed him when he choked him out is the thing. So did you have to do it? Do you have to do it? In general, I would tell people this is my personal recommendation. Don't take this as like any type of legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a cop. I'm not involved in the legal system at all. I'm just a guy that grew up in a rough area, seen some stuff, and been through some stuff. It is much better to go a little more than what you need to do, but no more than that. Because if you've never been in that situation, what I mean by that is a little more than you think you need to do, you have no clue what it takes to put down a person. And when I say put down, I don't necessarily mean like to stop their life, but to stop the threat, whether that be knocking them out or choking them out. Um, or in the case of a firearm, my firearm instructor, he's like, don't shoot don't shoot not to kill. It's kind of the idea. He was like just shoot and deal with it later. Um, but here, my thoughts on that are you really need to make sure that you keep yourself. You need to first that position and stay away. Then if you're there, try to get away. And if you can't get away, and when if you can't get away, you got to decide that before you try to get away. That's the other part, because there ain't nothing. When you try to escape a situation, full energy and get out of there, and it catches you anyway. Well, now you got to fight and get tired, and that's no good. And on top of that, they have the initiative because they're pursuing you. But once you recognize the threat, just end it and worry about the situation later. But make sure it's a legit threat because, once again, depending on where you're at, if they can show that you had some other options or you didn't have to go that far, yeah, you're looking at some problems.
Yeah, I see it from the perspective that precisely a man needs to know how to fight because fighting forces you to measure your opponent. You need to know, okay, what your opponent, the person that you have that is in front of you, is capable of. You see their posture, you see their stance, you see the way I don't know, they're only from their stance say, okay, they are trained or not.
That's there's a really, I talked about the article in the video and then I went to find it just to make sure I wasn't misspeaking. But right, so what they've done in different, and they've replicated this in a few different prisons, is they got guys that were convicted of violent crimes, murder, rape, those type of things, and they had them just like look at a video of a high victim area in New York, and they were like, "How can what do you think about the people and what they look like?" And it was so interesting the way they the researchers used the language. I don't think the convicts were saying this exactly, but the way the researchers described it is these people were asynchronous in their movement. And I thought that was a really interesting way to describe it. So what they were saying is, if you read over the interpretations of the study and kind of the direct notes, what they're saying is that these people look like they are not coordinated. They look like they're not coordinated, that they're not aware of where they are, that they're not sure of themselves moving through their environment. All things that you tend to develop. Let's just put fighting to the side and talk about like physical coordination. That part right there.
But they
If
were
you
trying to
play any
spot
sport,
they were trying to spot victims or perpetrators. I didn't get
victims,
that.
the
The victims.
perpetrators were spotting and telling
Okay.
the researchers what people look
What
like
makes
victims.
an easy victim?
right. What makes an easy victim, and I'll put it into like three buckets. It seems two of which you get without fighting. The first one is a coordinated set of movements. You know, you've seen those people who look like, you know, if it was time to run, they you probably walk faster than them. You know,
Hmm.
those people. So a physical coordination, or rather a lack thereof, makes you look like an easy target. The second one is the confidence with which someone moves in their area, and that confidence is like, do you know where you're going? And if you don't know where you're going, are you confident that you can figure out where to go? You know, any person who's ever been to another country, or if you've had visitors come to your country, you can you know the people, you know the tourists, you know the tourists,
Hmm.
not for any particular reason in terms of their appearance, and you know, unless they're dressing like super flashy and in a low income area, but because they don't know where they're going, and they're looking around like tourists. All right, so that's number two. Now here's number three. Number three is the person that you do get from fighting. That is the person who their body language suggests that they have a disagreeable demeanor. Is, I think, what it might have been put as.
Yes.
Um, that they look like, and it's not just like resting bitch face, but like it's a body thing. Uh, they look like if you tried to do something. This is aside from physical coordination. That's just movement. If you came, they would, you know, put up a fight, basically.
Okay.
You know, and here's the thing. You know, we go back to that alcohol thing. What does alcohol do? Alcohol wipes out all three of those, right? And then, you know, there were other little things too. I mean, like, one of the most foolish things you can do when you're in a place that you don't know, and I think in public in general, but definitely in a place you don't know, you know, you walk around with your headphones on. Oh man, what an easy target.
Yes.
So so that all of that comes together, kind of to reinforce what you're saying about the body language that you express to the world is a culmination of many parts of you. Your physical conditioning, your emotional readiness, your focus. And what the great thing that fighting does is, and there's really nothing like it that is easily accessible. I would say special forces training, I think, from my understanding of it, does something along these lines, is it puts you in dangerous situations. You know, a fight is dangerous. I mean, people die boxing almost every year, and certainly less than before, but it still happens. But you get physically hurt, but you learn how to focus and persist despite that danger. Your emotions are telling you, you know, your amygdala's on fire, kicking off that fight or flight, and you learn, okay, I'm going to tamp this down. And even if you don't know the neurochemistry, you understand how to make your that shut up and move through. And that has, you know, the way we described it, a buddy of mine described it to me early in my training, is turning down the noise. You stop being so skittish. Things don't make you jump as easily. You're a little more steely, and that comes through. That is communicated, and that is what I think a lot of people, when they look at somebody and they're just sizing them up physically, even if they're a little smaller, this got nothing to do with size. Size certainly is a great deterrent, but we have, well, you know, but you get 2, 3 guys, you know, it doesn't matter. And this holds for women too. You know,
At
the
Blades, and now it's not fair anymore.
yeah. So this is a way to, you know, to carry yourself, not just dealing with dangerous physical situations, but even in the civilized world, in the civilized world, I will put that in air quotes. Uh, Dealing with people who would try to emotionally manipulate you or bully you. You know, the hardest person to emotionally manipulate is the person who has the faith in themselves to simply walk away from the situation, because no one forces you to stay in that. And when it's pure emotional manipulation, it's only there is this fear of believing and being exposed to whatever you think is not that you think is a worse situation in dealing with the person you're stuck with. You see this a lot in people who decide to stay with someone despite it being a horrible match, both men and women. And it's like there's no confidence, there's no emotional resilience here that you can leave and find a better situation, or you think that situation is better than being alone. Um,
Yeah,
but when you
I
have
see
when
this.
yeah
I see this from the perspective that is the training itself. It's like the training itself transforms you into less of a target
yes
automatically. Is that if you begin adding all these ingredients, you add the ingredient of knowing how to position yourself and knowing that alcohol is going to blur your judgment, is going to get you into trouble, knowing that, well, you try to avoid some dark alleys at some times, okay, you have some common sense. We should be talking a bit of street smarts as well, that you um, have certain knowledge of it. And if you train, then at the same time, statistically, you add all those factors, and you realize that the training itself makes you more self-aware of your surroundings and makes you less of a target. So, is this a misconception? I think that the main misconception is that you train only because you want to exert violence over other
right
men, and it is the exact opposite. You train to avoid that violence, and people don't realize. I until I had this conversation with you, I couldn't have like assemble all these pieces, and I realized that, for example, the example of this guy who choked. He did not choke the guy to death in New York, because there are reports that he still was breathing, and he had a pulse way after the fact. And there are also situations in which I thought that we saw a GIF. I think you reacted to a GIF or a video that somebody was in this some kind of protest. I think it was one of the protests that they block a street, and somebody gets out of their car and he just made his hook, and that is not only the hook, but you can literally, if you are trained, you should be trained emotional resilience. You said that those words are very important, because you need the emotional resilience as well to know when it's too much, because you know that if you knock down somebody, it's not the punch to their face, but if you knock them down, the hit of the head against the pavement, that can be and the snap of the neck. If they are not trained, if somebody's not trained, and you, for example, you with your background in boxing, you connect a hook, their neck is not going to, the neck is going to snap. They're going to be dead on the spot. So that's something. So that kind of things in a high adrenaline situation, that is somebody that is not trained, doesn't have control over his emotions, doesn't have awareness of what is the actual threat, cannot read what the other people, if the other person is an actual threat, and cannot have the measure of what is excessive force. So it's a recipe for going into jail. It's that you're going to jail.
yeah
It's a it's
even,
a
and
complete
look,
mess.
and even if you don't go to jail, you're gonna be tied up in a legal battle, and that's just as bad.
Yeah,
Not,
just
I mean,
as
not
bad.
just as bad, but it's another headache you don't need.
You have another quote that I always remember. That have helped me as well, because I can be quite passionate sometimes about arguing, but I always remember, it's like you pop up like in the air next to me saying, remember that there's always one guy out there who does not care about going to jail. Now that we're talking about going to jail, that quote is just amazing, and that's maybe why I started asking the question about de-escalation. When somebody has this bravado attitude, they're trying to provoke you into something. It's like okay, you need to be aware is this really worth that? Do I have to prove anything? Okay, and I that proving anything. I come from a very insecure background, having a lot of insecurity, having a lot of, oh, I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself physically. I have to prove myself mentally. I have to prove all these things, and I think many men in this era have the same issue, and we in many ways hide on under this guise of, oh, we are in a civilized society. That is not the way that. By the way, there's a joke that your thumbnail of your video says violence is the answer. I always joke that violence is never the answer. Violence is the question, and the answer is yes. I always
Yeah.
joke with that. But it is fascinating how now okay, now we know that men have to know how to fight. How we get men into learning how to fight? How what can we do about that?
Oh man, there's the hard way, and then there's the easy way. Um, and I'm not sure which would be one or which is more or less, but I do know one will receive more resistance to the other, and I'm not quite sure which one that would be. But one way, and the way I'm a big fan of personally, is to make physical fitness a requirement to graduate from high school, but not just get the class and show up, kind of the way it was when I was in high school, but something similar to like the APFT, the Army Physical Fitness Test. You got to score a certain thing, and you got to engage in a certain number of matches and stuff like that. I Matches for boxing. I would be hugely supportive of that type of initiative. But see, when if they put some type of initiative like that in place, but now you got a bunch of teachers that are gonna be like, oh shit, man, I gotta be in shape, and that's fine. But that's where the kickback will come. And then on the other hand, you could foster a community of combat sports, and really, I think that is sort of happening. There are certainly way more people interested, and I think maybe I am that because that's part of the space I'm in. I might see it more, but I do feel like there are more people getting interested. A lot of people give Jake Paul shit, but
Mhm.
I don't. In fact, I need to make a video about why he's one of the best things that's happened to boxing, maybe since the Riddick season. But or well, I think he came before then. But uh, one of the things that he's done is he's got a whole audience of people in under 30, I think under 25, I'm not sure, but these are people who are watching this guy do this. Now, the purists out there know that, he ain't really done shit yet, but the fact that he's in there doing it and he's showing people can be done it, and it's fun, it's entertaining. He's paying the fighters great, so it's not shady that he has on his undercard. And so if you can get people to make it cool again, and we see this happen, like when the Karate Kid came out in the '90s, dojo
Mm.
enrollment went up. When the Queen's Gambit came out on Netflix, for a moment, the chess was the most played game on or most streamed game on Twitch. That's crazy. All right,
We
you
need a new Rocky movie. We need a new.
so like that. We need people to show not only is this acceptable, but it's vital. Because people, when I started fighting, uh, all of my friends, and I'm fortunate. This is a story for another time, but a lot of my friends, despite my upbringing, a lot of my friends are middle to upper middle class kids. Whose parents would never even let them think about this sort of thing, and my mom maybe wouldn't have. I don't know. I was 22 when I first started, so she couldn't say anything. But I do remember many of them had worries about me fighting, and I'm just like, well, we're all gonna die one day, The difference is that when I am in my last few years, I'm going to have really cool stories to tell, and I'll be in a sense my youth days want to sense be immortalized, and I'll be able to talk about this, that, or the other, and it'll just be really, and it gives me new perspectives, and also one of the things that it's carried over to is the respect that I give my body and my health. I'm flattered when it happens, and it happens more and more the older I get, but people don't think I'm turning 40 in 2 months, and I think that's a great sign of the health, because I don't think I look young or younger than my age, but that just goes to show what the average is like. If that, because that's all we're basing it on is comparison. Everyone, so it does so much. And what we need to do to get people to do it is to show those benefits and to show people in positions of influence taking part, because we got to be real here, man. People look up to that stuff and they want to try it and they get curious, and this generation that's coming around, now millennials are becoming parents. And so whatever, I think it's like Gen Alpha, or maybe something like that. Whatever generation my son is in, is whatever that one is. I think there'll be more examples on a larger scale of people who are engaging in combat sports and in a beneficial, I won't say beneficial, because no matter what, you take damage. I don't want to like paint this as it's
Yeah,
safe. Nah, it's not safe. But that's not really the point. The point is that it's not safe. There are
that's the
ways to
point.
certainly make it less dangerous, but uh, overall, I think we just got to get more people to see things, short of like forcing them to do it in high school.
What about if you have we have the influencers and Jake Paul, for example, you mentioned him, and the boxing. We were gonna be talking about the different which martial arts could be better. But what about the men who are over 40 years old, over 50 years old? What about them? They should also be taking some
They should
kind of.
also start. The only difference there, the only thing that changes is you're probably not going to ever seriously compete. That's just the facts of it, because um, if you start as an amateur, I think the age limit is 35 before you're forced to compete as a master. It might be a little older. I can't remember, but there is definitely a master's division where you are no longer. Um, well, I know I think you can be matched against younger guys, but you got to like take extra tests and stuff like that. And it's rare for a 35-year-old plus guy who has never fought before to be like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'll go in there and get my bell rung against somebody who is possibly 15 years younger than me, and make me look silly if that's their first time. But that doesn't mean they can't train. That doesn't mean they
Train.
can't take on the lifestyle. That doesn't mean they can't learn the skills. There's nothing wrong with learning the skills. You can still spar all you want to, but in terms of like sanctioned bouts under one of the boxing bodies in amateur professional boxing, that's probably not in your future if you're just starting after 35. And I would say almost certainly, but there's no rule that says it can't happen, so it could happen. But yeah, your age is no factor. Not at all. I've seen guys in the gym taking lessons who were like over 60. I think the guy was 70. I'm not sure, but definitely over 60. So there's no reason why you can't get in there and learn it.
That's right. We are talking exclusively about boxing here. We're talking about boxing. You think boxing is the best way for any age?
Um, no, no. I mean, whatever. I give in my video. I was talking about. I make a distinction about why striking combat arts are for this particular aspect of what you get out of self defense, what you get out of combat. Why they are superior to grappling arts, but
And
I
running
make
fast
this
as well. Hit hard
yeah,
and run fast. That is the
right.
combination.
But in terms of general fitness, toughness, training, what you can get out of it, the demeanor you develop, mostly any activity that forces you to use your body to overcome situations of discomfort will do it. It just so happens that getting hit by someone who's trained is probably the highest amount of discomfort you can non-lethal discomfort that you can experience, and in some cases it is lethal, but rare cases in sanctioned bouts against a trained person. And when I say rare, I mean in terms of a percentage of all bouts that happen. I know I mentioned that people have died in boxing, but that is not the common occurrence. Not even it's not even the like uncommon occurrence. It is very very much three standard deviations below the average.
Mm. Because it is for let's say older, in the sense of 40, 50 years old. It's important that the physical part becomes more important. The cardio, the bone, the joints, all that gets that benefit. The posture as well. You know that we work. I work, for example, like 10 hours a day at a desk. I have to be very mindful of my joints, my posture. At least my obsession with body language helps, and my obsession with that street smarts helps as well. But I think that for older men is also that it's a fun way to create this community, which is a word that we have talked about in the show over and over again. That we see many people talking about a community. We see politicians talking about a community, celebrities talking about a community. They are desperate because they don't really have a community, because they are not authentic. But maybe when people really get together and say, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys, hey, let's maybe they don't like the gym, but maybe they like the idea of okay, let's have this, I don't know, this fight club. Okay, let's train so we can spar against each other. Maybe that makes that fun. And I think that making things fun is really is fundamental, especially for the long run. This is not something that you're gonna do 6 months and that's it. There's something that you should be doing for a long time, especially, well, for all the benefits. So what we have arrived in this conversation. We have talked about everything except violence, which is quite counterintuitive. I have always said that we men have to be dangerous gentlemen. That is what we should aspire to. That is those two words, because you have the I think it's Jordan Peterson that said that we need to have the ability for violence, for aggression, and not use it, not have to use it. Because if you don't have the ability for aggression, then you essentially are harmless, which you don't want to be. Because as you said in your example, that all these inmates, they were able to spot who was the easier target just by watching how they walk upon the street. Yeah, it's like one can see that in one city. Oh, okay, these people are clueless, and maybe you get near them. Hey, are you lost? Are you looking for some landmark or something? Because you just see them and you can spot that. But they are also this, let's say bad subjects that they're trying to get advantage of, take advantage of people. And that's when you see that your thumbnail is really edgy. Violence is the answer, but when you think about it, it's everything. Is you have to learn to take a punch. Once you take a punch, and you notice that you survive the punch, you realize that so many things are so much easier. Well, it's not like 50 Cent. It was not a punch, but 6 bullets. It's like he says that once you survive 6 bullets, it's your perspective on life changes. You don't have to go for the bullet. You don't have to go for the bullets, but your perspective on your own capacity in general changes. And I think from an emotional and a self-reassurance perspective, makes it easier, makes everything so much easier to overcome hardships in life. But you were talking about I don't know if you mentioned it or was myself who mentioned it. I want to point out. I want to make some kind of pause to point out your. You have a program here, the Stoic Street Smarts Blueprint, and this looks really interesting, especially because street smarts are so useful. I don't know if you can talk about how street smarts complement what we have talked about how to fight. We already know that, well, it changes your demeanor, it changes your awareness, but what else can you add about street smarts in this regard?
Yeah, so street smarts is really just the way you interact with other people. You take away the whole negative connotation of the street and how you apply it and how you learn it. At the end of the day, it's not just, well, rather, it is about interacting with people, but interacting with them from a position of understanding human nature,
All
and
right.
you learn to maneuver and work with people in a way that maximizes the benefits and minimizes the downside. And that unfortunately requires you to be somewhat of a cynic about people, but you have to be able to still trust and interact and work with them. So it's like, okay, you don't go full out on trust anybody, but at the same time, you're not naive. And that balance in the middle between naivety and cynicism, that is really what the crux of street smarts is about. Because if you can't balance those two factors, you'll either trust too easily and get taken advantage of, or not be able to work with others and you'll have zero opportunities. So you've got to be able to maneuver both of those arenas, and the best way to do that is to learn street smarts. And what I try to do in the course is deliver lessons and exercises in a way for you to learn it without having to get the trauma that typically comes with how uh, most of us from that part of life, from those areas, learn it. It's certainly possible to the very least gain what I'll say is a practical academic understanding of people, which is why I tried to include, or I did include, exercises for you to work on and to use and trainings and trials. Because it's one thing to like go and read 48 Laws of Power, Machiavelli's The Prince, but they're all academic ideas. They're not and on top of that, the authors of these guys are just these books, they have their own perspective and the stories they tell, and their perspective is colored by their background, or their background and certain things that they may not have experienced to really drive home certain points. But how do you get those points through to people without having them go through the stuff that messes you up? That's what I try to accomplish.
Yes,
Is to
because
get, yeah.
for example, you read the 48 Laws of Power, and that is so high level that maybe you have a hard time just connecting. Some laws will be easier to connect than others to your experience, but that is the idea is to have a high level explanation of that. It's like the book Persuasion by Cialdini. It's so high level
Yeah.
that you say that, all right, okay, this is the Bible on persuasion, but how can I apply this? And regarding the experience, it has happened to me from the way before the creation of this YouTube channel. Since I've been working with body languages, the manipulation thing is that everybody has been manipulated at some point. Everybody has been taken advantage at some point. Some have been lucky to survive that, to overcome it, to overcome those situations, to get out of those situations. I always say that it's never your duty to fix people. This happens a lot. Okay, how can I fix? How can I do this? What can I do to fix this person? You cannot. You simply cannot. Only the person can fix themselves, and it is not your duty. I always say that your duty is exactly as you said in the first part of the conversation, is that you have to get yourself out of the aggression zone. You have to get yourself out of the trouble. That is the first step. You cannot expect to be next to the guy throwing punches and not get a punch in the face.
Yeah.
That's simply not possible. And this is so different because since it's psychological, people think that okay, then I can change a person if I can. People think that they can have an argument, a reasonable argument, a logical argument with practically everybody, but then you realize that maybe they are badly misinformed. The other party is badly misinformed, or in the worst case scenario, they are downright, they come in bad faith. They want to manipulate you. And that's when you know that people really need, how do I connect this high level information into my own experience? And
Yeah.
that's what I tell. This is what I thought that in some way or another, talking about this being my first interview has gone really. It's not an interview. It's not been a conversation, more a
Like a
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a conversation. It's I don't like this calling interview because we are sharing experiences and and try to understand that sometimes it's like when I tell people that for to prevent being manipulated, you need to learn about persuasion, about manipulation. And I always tell them the same analogy. If you want to defend yourself, you want to learn how to defend yourself, you have to learn how to throw punches. Even if you, oh,
Yes.
yeah, it's oh, you're fighting fire with fire, and you say, well, yes, but this conversation, we realize that the whole point is to not engage in violence, and you learn street smarts, and you learn manipulation and persuasion. How does that work? To not being manipulated, to avoid that. So the same way that people can spot a victim, you can spot somebody who wants to take advantage of you. And you said something that I think this is the most important thing. The only way that we can survive this is how we can find that fine balance in between trust and being a bit cynical. I think that
Yeah.
is the most difficult part because, well, it's I talk for myself. I've always been I was a people pleaser, and from a people pleaser perspective, I was, oh, I need to trust people because I need to I need to be liked by them. And something that I was often I at some point I said, I'm hurting myself doing this. And
Hmm.
this conversation about violence, learning how to be dangerous both physically and psychologically is counterintuitive, but helps you be safer and not be engaged in conflict in the end. It's something that is, how does that work? Yeah, well, but that works. That works both in the physical and psychological sense.
Absolutely.
What else could you say to our audience? We were talking about men, but a huge part of my audience is also very lovely ladies that want to know, how does that apply to me? Do I have to learn how to be aggressive as well, or I need to expect to my husband to defend me? How does this apply to women?
Women face a unique challenge in this regard because the challenge with being a woman, aside from the physical strength aspect, if it comes to that, is that if you're nice, guys get the wrong idea many times. You can't just be a nice girl a lot of times, and that's really unfortunate. So that leaves many women in this position where they have to, you know, not be nice. Or like you see this a lot. If a woman's been victimized, the shield is to not be even remotely accommodating, and that's really unfortunate. So as I think about like how I would deal with this, there's a certain level of, oh man, men are a mess in this regard. Everything can be, you interpret everything the way you want to see it, and it's unfortunate that if that a girl can't just be a nice person anymore. Um,
It's
but
a shame.
as far as the a practical application of how I think and where my mind goes, and this might not be correct, it's my intuition pulling things together. I would say that women should place an even higher place. I mean, I think guys should do this too, at the same level, but now for different reasons. I think women have to place a way bigger premium on, or way bigger value on, the position aspect. There are many situations that are just more dangerous for women that they're dealing with men, especially that doesn't have to. It's unfortunate that the world is the way it is. There's this whole campaign. I wrote an article about this. I'll tell this story real quick. This to kind of sum this up. I wrote this article about the role that alcohol plays in sexual assault, and I drew on FBI stats and uh, interviews from a few organizations, and the conclusion I reached, and I crunched the numbers to verify this. The conclusion I reached is that if you remove the role of alcohol, you eliminate about 90% of sexual assaults on the age range between 18 to 24. And that's mind blowing.
You have a video about that. You made a video about that already, or you think of
I
making a
haven't made a
video?
video about that, but I wrote an essay about it. I'll probably make a video about it when I make
Okay,
some content
Well,
about
that that
sobriety.
that is
Um,
that's just that,
that's mind blowing, and I'll put
mind
it another
blowing.
way. I'll put it another way. Of the reports of the reported incidences of sexual assault on women between the ages of 18 to 24, alcohol was listed as part of what happened in about 90% of the cases. I have the links and everything in the article. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the article. Is like I don't know what I'm going to do with it later, but I just thought this was interesting. But I do know why, in terms of a motivation for writing that article. I was initially going to include it in my book, Sober Letters to My Drunken Self, but I also um, I had stumbled upon this. There was this incident a few years ago where the Stanford swimmer was convicted of sexual assault with this girl at this party, and everyone was outraged about how light the sentence was and all that stuff. And one of the things that Stanford had up at the university, they were putting up signs. You know, initially it was warning women to not drink so much, and then they got angry about it and were like, "Tell guys not to be pigs." And I'm like, it's my thought about the fighting. I don't want anyone ever to instigate any type of violence, but I can't tell the bad guys don't be bad guys. I can just put myself in a position to not be taken advantage of by bad guys, and it's simple. And it's a simple fact that the female body being smaller and composed of more fat more readily absorbs alcohol, and it has a stronger effect. But I wrote that article because I wanted to see, like, how big of a deal is this? Or how crazy is this, and can we find some data on it? And that story is a great example of what I'm talking about. There are certain situations that are going to be inherently more dangerous for women, and avoiding those situations is even more paramount because if I get myself into a bad situation, I have the option of fighting my way out of it. Um,
Correct.
Simple as that. It might not be effective. They might have guns, but I have a way out, and I am a deterrent, not an invitation. Like a guy isn't looking at me looking like, man, he's got great lips and hair, and the way he was looking at me, like at least not most guys. That's not happening to me. I'm not a magnet, in other words.
Yeah.
But a woman is a stronger magnet for a lot of predatory behavior, and that positioning thing plays an even bigger role. I
Also,
would
for
also
okay.
I would also recommend uh, that women, if it's allowed in your country, you should carry and train with some type of self defense item, whether that be a knife or a small gun like a 22 or something. Uh, but carry train with that thing. Go to the range because we just live in a crazy world today, especially in cities. You don't know what's you don't know what the other person is about, what they're going to do, how they're going to behave, what their intentions are with you. So you need to keep yourself safe. And the two big things I would recommend, certainly at least in my country, the United States, is women have to be, especially young women. That alcohol is it just affects you in so many ways, both the perpetrator and the victim, that makes things happen that otherwise would not happen. And once you take care of that, then you need to like really embrace the fact that you live in a country with a Second Amendment, and if you don't take advantage of that to protect yourself, then I think you're leaving the door open. Because look, just having a gun ain't enough. A lot of people got guns, but even how often do they go to the range and train with it and practice shooting? They has to be part of their life. And what that allows you to do, think about what these two things allow a woman to do. We were talking about how you can be a gentle, nice guy when you can handle yourself if things go rough. Well, when you know that you are defended and well, when you can take care of yourself, but it doesn't come from a position of being hurt in the first place, then you're able to really you're able to be as nice as you want to be because you've got boundaries in place. That's the other thing, really, really strong boundaries, like very strong ones. I would, better to err on the side of a guy thinking you're not interested. That's strong
Then
boundary. Uh, than to like, but if you're not interested, make that super clear and then start documenting if the guy turns into a weirdo. Uh, but but in terms of like any type of mixed messages, yeah, I wouldn't even come close to it. Some people think it's a little old fashioned, but in this day and age, it's kind of the problem with the whole, at least with younger people, the whole, guys and girls being friends. It's not that they can't be friends; it's that, as we were talking about earlier in the conversation, interpreting certain things the way you want
yes.
to, your confirmation bias is going to make something that isn't something really look like something, and then you're going to be mad when it's not. How you
Yeah,
deal with that anger is a
when you add alcohol to the mix, then everything is
it's a
blurred.
big it's a big deal, and I've gotten comfortable enough to know, look, if I get kicked back for any of these ideas, and I don't think they're extreme, I think they're very empowering to girls. Keep your head clear from drugs and alcohol. Learn to defend yourself with a firearm and have strong boundaries. And with those things in place, you're pretty much. I mean, look. There's always going to be some crazy dude that could jump out the bushes, who's like 250 pounds or something. But like after a certain point, everything is together. Everything is solid. Strong social networks. When I met my wife the first time, we went to a bar and I just happened to not be drinking, but she told me later on, she was like, I told all my friends where I was at, and we went to a well lit place, and like she didn't know me. I could have been a goddamn psycho. You never know. Uh, and these kind of practices, they just go a long way to preventing the worst sides of human nature coming out. And that's really the essence of the street smarts. It's like, look, I'm not going to assume that you're some type of crazy rapist, but I'm not going to play the game as if you're not some kind of crazy rapist. Let's
Yes,
prove to me that you're
that that
cool,
that
and then
balance.
and then proceed.
Yeah, that's correct. And yeah, you're talking about the United States, but in some countries, women can't even carry pepper spray. It's forbidden. It's in UK. Everything. Women cannot
No
carry
kidding.
even. Yeah, no
Yeah.
pepper spray.
And
I think in
man, that's
most countries in Europe, it is my understanding, pepper spray is forbidden. Let alone guns or knives or anything. So
wow. That's crazy.
yeah, it is. It's crazy. So
I
you
need to
have in.
expand my worldview because I mean, and I've lived in Europe, but I guess it was like not an issue. I was there with my wife. I mean,
I know that in the
I,
UK everything is forbidden, everything, except those guys with machetes on the street that somehow they get away with it. You know how it is. But
yeah,
that's when that awareness is even more important, and you have
even
to
more
understand
important. Yep.
that you are responsible. You're also responsible. It's okay. You can say, "Oh, man shouldn't be evil," or "There shouldn't be evil in the world," but that is not feasible. There's always going to be evil in the world, and you're responsible to have a common sense approach to what you are going to do. Hang out with friends, well lit places, and make sure that have friends that check on you. And well, it's like they say. I remember one thing. Now that you mentioned New York, there's this illustrator, this guy who made a series of illustrations about New York, and I always remember one illustration that said that you never get into that when you're in the subway and you see one of these how do you say them this tram these cars these
Oh,
trams
like a
this
homeless. Oh yeah, yeah, like a homeless person.
no you are on the
Well,
subway, you're going to board the subway, just it's like the where you board, right? It's like the car. I don't know if you see one of these that is completely empty, don't go inside because it's empty for a reason. It doesn't explain
yep.
why, but I found it really interesting. It's like that. It's like you have that hunch. We could talk about intuition. Could talk about that. But yeah, people be responsible. And it's incredible what you say about alcohol. That article that you wrote, give me the link so I can add it to the description of this video as well. And I want to
Oh yeah, for
remind
sure.
our lovely audience that Ed has a nice YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch his videos. He has a lot of insights about street smarts, and he also has, if you want to go a bit, make it take it to the next level, you take his Stoic Street Smarts blueprint course. Well, he will teach you how to not get taken advantage of. Right, Ed? This is
Absolutely.
great. Has great. It has been a pleasure. I'm sure this is not gonna be the last time we do this. We're gonna do this again in the future. When you get your book out and when you, well, I'm sure that we're going to do this again in the future, Ed. Thank you for being in this first interview of the Jesus Enrique Rosas show, and my pleasure, an honor to have you here.
Hey man, thank you for having me. It really means a lot you reached out.
Well, my body language buddies, my name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and until we meet on another interview, remember the most important words: much love and bliss.